Even though we bear the truth, apostates and others may cast us as dishonest, as deceivers.
Such reports are often characterized by distortions, inaccuracies, and sometimes outright falsehood.
This video was made possible by my wonderful Patreon community and my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much. Welcome you 15,000 lovers of freedom and the 80% of you who haven't subscribed yet to my rebuttal of the February 2024 JW broadcasting. In this episode, we're going to be learning why we need to put our confidence in Jehovah's organization and why we should not listen to any negative reports made against them. And we have a music video that invites us to return to Jehovah. It's about to get culty. Remember, we're doing the cringe challenge, so if you cringe, you lose. And when you cringe, let me know the exact moment you lost it. Are you ready? Let's go.
This is the February 2024 edition of JW Broadcasting.
Hey Watchtower, feel free to use that intro.
Well, the Bible is like a cookbook, full of recipes that work, that can make our life spiritually successful.
Yes, the Bible is like a cookbook that has conflicting instructions, and if used by the wrong person, can lead to the creation of some awful meals that can kill someone. I think we should take that book off the shelf.
Peter first mentions unity of mind. The footnote says, think in agreement. So we must think in agreement with one another, but especially with Jehovah and his organization.
We're only 5 minutes into the talk and my cult senses are tingling. Full unity with Jehovah and his organization. Oh boy, let's see what he means by that.
In what way? The latter part of Isaiah 30:15 says,
"Your strength will be in keeping calm and showing trust."
That's exactly what the faithful slave has done. So let us have unity of mind with them and have the same calmness and confidence in Jehovah as we face personal challenges in our life.
The faithful slave has been calm? Then why did they declare war on apostates a couple of years ago? And why do they constantly talk about negative reports in the media? If they actually trusted in Jehovah, they wouldn't give a single fuck about what the world says about them. Nah, my dude, I think the faithful slave is terrified and is gonna become abundantly clear in the following years.
In 2 Kings chapter 4, a Shunammite woman is mentioned who had confidence in the prophet Elisha. She suffered a terrible tragedy in her life, yet she remained calm and showed trust in the man of the true God, Elisha. Her example of trust in Jehovah's representative is worthy of imitation.
What? Are you seriously comparing the governing body with Elisha? You mean the prophet who raised people from the grave and made metal axes float in the water and, when insulted by a group of children, summoned a pair of she-bears to tear 42 of them to shreds? That Elisha? Because I've never seen the governing body performing cool miracles like that. The only similarity some of these governing body members have with Elisha is that they're bald as hell. Get out of here.
In fact, there is an expression she uses in chapter 4 that conveys the level of trust we want to have in Jehovah and his earthly representatives today.
Then Brother Griffin, yeah, that's his real name, recounts the story where Elisha resurrects the son of the Shunammite woman, and he resurrects him by, I quote, going up and laying on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Yeah, totally not weird, Elisha. Then Griffin says that because the Shunammite woman trusted in Elisha, who was Jehovah's representative, we should also trust in Jah's modern representatives, the governing body. Tell me you consider yourself a prophet without telling me you consider yourself a prophet.
So let's work hard to have unity of mind with Jehovah's organization by keeping calm and showing trust in Jehovah and being confident that with Jehovah's help, everything will be all right. As this system draws to a close, Satan will try to divide us from within. So, love for our brothers and sisters and empathizing with one another will become ever more important. It will serve to unify us. Think of the empathy of Jehovah's organization.
Oh my god, this guy just won't shut up about the organization. He's mentioned it like 5 times already. Why are you talking about the organization as if it was a living entity capable of empathy? This is insane.
We all have personal challenges, but so do our overseers, those taking the lead in the organization here on earth. Some of them have lost loved ones in death, just like us. Some have experienced sickness and anxiety, just like us. We love them for their empathy. Think about the heavenly part of Jehovah's organization. Since Satan's rebellion, Jehovah has been disappointed, saddened, angered at the actions of imperfect men. These are real feelings that our empathetic Heavenly Father possesses.
Honestly, Jehovah sounds clinically depressed. He needs to touch some grass.
The final quality highlighted in 1 Peter 3:8 is humility. Why do we need humility? Because we need to trust.
I swear, if he mentions the organization again, I'm gonna lose it.
Trust in Jehovah and his organization requires humility, not relying on our own strength or wisdom. Humility helps us to cope with whatever God permits. When we face anxiety and pressure in our life, we may yearn for immediate relief. But humility helps us to trust that Jehovah knows precisely when and how to act in our behalf. So we wait patiently. Jehovah always responds to our needs in his time and in his way.
Wait, if Jehovah is just going to ignore your requests and act on things on his own time, doesn't that render prayer pointless? Whatever.
So, as the Great Tribulation approaches, humbly trust in Jehovah and his organization. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse number 6 says this:
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time.
Brothers, there is no better place to be than under the mighty hand of God. Humility is a beautiful ingredient that helps us to remain there.
Submitting yourself to a desert storm god is not a sign of humility. At this point, it's kind of just insanity. You know what is actually humble? Being willing to admit when you have been duped and being able to recognize when your religion is wrong, something the governing body is completely unable to do.
So, what were the ingredients in our recipe for spiritual success? First was unity of mind. Be at unity with Jehovah's organization today by keeping calm and showing trust. In the words of the Shunammite woman in 2 Kings chapter 4, when facing adversity, always know that with Jehovah, everything is all right.
She never even said that.
Second was fellow feeling, brotherly affection, and tender compassion. All aspects of loving empathy. Remember, we're all in this together. The celestial chariot is empathetic toward what we face and will respond to our personal and organizational needs.
The celestial chariot is an inanimate object, you peanut. Unless those monstrous wheeled angels are able to feel empathy towards lowly humans.
Finally, Try always to include humility in your recipe for success. Humility requires trust. So trust that Jehovah's way of doing things is always best.
No, that is the complete opposite of humility. That is being dogmatic. Dogmatic people lack humility because they're unable to admit when they're wrong. They treat their beliefs as absolute fact. What you are encouraging is not humility. It's complete obedience to a group of fallible men in New York. Bruh.
The faithful slave, his earthly representatives today. With Jehovah's organization, those taking the lead in the organization here on earth. Organization and his organization. Jehovah's organization. We've seen that the Bible's recipes can make our life spiritually successful and help us improve our relationships. In the following interview, note how applying a recipe of Bible principles can also undo the damage caused by poor decisions.
We graduated in June, got married in July, had a child in November.
Now we get this interview from this couple who studied with the witnesses for a short time, then stopped studying and suddenly their marriage started falling apart.
At one point, 2 witnesses knocked on my door and they showed me Psalm 83:18. God's name is Jehovah.
Were people out in the ministry actually that impressed about learning the name Jehovah? Because Watchtower treats this moment as the catalyst of why many people started studying the Bible with them, but doesn't really make sense. Oh, take a look at this psalm that contains a bastardized rendering of the divine name. Would you like to join our cult? Super silly.
Baseball is more important to me than even my wife.
Damn, yeah, no wonder you got divorced, man.
I had a real problem with headship. There were times when I felt like I was smarter than him. So I felt like I could make a better decision than he could make.
Wait, so following biblical headship means you can't be smarter than your husband, even if he's a complete dumbass? Okay. Oh, this religion is not misogynist, by the way.
In time, Jana left me for another person, and that's what really hurt me. Jana had a hard time with drugs and so forth. That's when I got custody of the kids.
Why is this couple forced to relive this trauma for the interview, all for the sake of promoting the Watchtower? It's kind of cruel. It reminds me of that interview with Will Smith and his wife, where the wife just starts talking about her entanglements with another dude, and Will Smith just sits there and has to listen to that. Yeah, same vibes.
Mm-hmm.
I decided at that moment I was done. And Jehovah popped into my head. I remember getting down and telling Jehovah, just show me what to do. I went through the telephone book and looked up Jehovah's Witnesses.
Just another clear example of how converts to high control religions are just vulnerable people looking for a way out. This woman needed rehab and marriage counseling, not a doomsday cult.
One of the scriptures that helped me to rebuild our marriage is 1 Corinthians 11:3. Art is my head. I am not the head. Knowing that everybody but Jehovah has a head, I view that as a protection. Now I don't have to make decisions on my own.
Congrats, lady. You are a submissive woman now. Surely that's what all women in the world want, to submit themselves to some dude. What do you think, ladies?
I remarried Arthur on April 2nd, 1979.
Well, I'm glad they had a happy ending, at least.
Amazing, isn't it? How learning and applying Bible principles and keeping Jehovah in the picture made such a difference for Art and Zaina. That's why we exert ourselves to bring God's Word to as many as possible.
Next, we get a history of MEPS, the computer system created by Watchtower that facilitated translation of their publications into hundreds of languages. This segment is quite interesting, but it just reminds us that this religion has been sustained by hundreds of brilliant, hardworking people who have never been compensated for their labor. But of course, they use this segment only to end up praising the governing body.
In the end, the story of MEPS is more than a story of technology. It's one of love. Love moved the governing body to seek better ways to provide spiritual food to people of every tribe and tongue.
Yeah, not even close.
But what if we face a situation where we personally begin to wonder if Jehovah is blessing us? Let's see how lessons from the life of John the Baptist can help us remain certain of Jehovah's love and protection.
You know what time it is, boys and girls? Time for some good old-fashioned persecution porn.
I knew this day would come. True Christians expect opposition. But it hurt to see Brother Vasil get arrested. After what happened, I was scared to talk about Jehovah.
I was so happy when I heard Nicole got invited to SKE. But as I kept thinking about it, I started to feel empty, disappointed. Others seem to get so many privileges. Why not me?
Why are these two trials being compared? The Russian guy is facing prison for sharing his faith, and this girl's trial is not being sent off to SKE. Not even in the same ballpark. Then they learn from the example of John the Baptist, the original doomsday prophet who started this whole mess. And why does he have short hair? He's a Nazarene. He never cut his hair. Come on, Watchtower, you should know this.
Nothing prevented him from preaching courageously.
Bro, and look how that advice turned out for John.
People need to learn about Jehovah. Like John, I can have courage, no matter what adversity I may face.
Excellent lessons for us all.
No, you're putting these Russian JWs in some serious danger by asking them to preach in public. You know these witnesses are getting 7-year sentences, right? 7 years in a Russian prison. It's so easy for the governing body to tell people to preach when they themselves live in a country with religious freedoms. I want to see Mark Sanderson preaching in the cold Moscow streets. Let's see how long his morbid ass lasts in the gulag.
Often in lands where our work is banned, lies and propaganda are spread to justify persecution. But it's not just in such lands where we face false reports, misinformation, and outright lies. In fact, even though we bear the truth, apostates and others may cast us as dishonest, as deceivers. How can we respond to that unfair treatment? Let's listen to Brother Seth Hyatt's recent morning worship discussion, Speaking Truth, Though Labeled as Deceivers.
Ooh, here comes the brainwashing section. We already mentioned it before in this video, go check it out if you haven't. But what Watchtower is about to do is to equate a bad or negative report with a false report. That way, any JW watching this will consider all negative reports made about the organization as false, regardless of how true they are. Listen carefully.
Have you ever been confronted by a bad report, a false report about Jehovah's people? It may be a newspaper article or a segment on the evening news, or perhaps some subject is brought up in the ministry. It could be a broad range of subjects. Our neutral stand, our stand on blood, our adherence to Jehovah's elevated moral standards and appreciation for the sanctity of marriage, or our insistence on keeping the congregation clean by disfellowshipping unrepentant wrongdoers.
Notice how carefully worded his statement is. He lumps actual criticisms of the organization with trivial things nobody mentions. No one is complaining about your neutral political stance or your appreciation for high moral standards or your beliefs on marriage. What we are bringing to the light is your blood policies, which result in the death of who knows how many children, your barbaric shunning policies, which break up families and drive people to unalive themselves, and your intentional cover-up of CSA. He didn't even mention the last one, of course.
But whatever the subject, there are some commonalities. Such reports are often characterized by distortions, inaccuracies, and sometimes outright falsehood.
Show us then. Show us a single example of a negative report that contains falsehoods. All Watchtower does is put fear into their members, into their followers, by saying, oh, there's negative reports about us that you shouldn't listen to, but they never give examples of them. This guy has been talking for like less than 2 minutes and he's already pissing me off.
And inevitably, they're presented with certainty and surety as though they were fact. Now, when you're confronted with such a report, how do you feel? Disheartened? Discouraged? Angry?
It shouldn't matter how a report makes you feel. What matters is how truthful it is. But I guess that's the approach he's gonna take for this talk, a focus on feelings.
Consider the experience of a pioneer sister who was conducting a Bible study. And in the course of conducting the study, a woman walked into the house unannounced. She didn't ring the doorbell, didn't knock. And as it turned out, an acquaintance of the student, she walked right in, interrupted the Bible study, and in her hand was a book written by a man who at one time had associated with Jehovah's people. The woman said to the student, "You need to read this book." Well, an interesting conversation ensued, and our sister found herself in the position of being cast in the role of a deceiver. How did she handle that situation? And how did the Bible student respond?
The Bible student then read the book, realized she was being roped into a cult, and ended her study. Nah, just kidding. Of course she didn't.
Well, before we answer that question, let's see how the words of today's text and surrounding verses can help us to have the proper view. Look, if you would please, at 2 Corinthians chapter 6. In verse 7, the words of today's text, we recommend ourselves as God's ministers by truthful speech. Well, we worship Jehovah, the God of truth, and we take delight in that. And as our Watchtower comment makes the point, we're truthful in things big and small. We love the truth. We love telling the truth about Jehovah. We are regarded as deceivers, and yet we are truthful. Now that's an interesting paradox, isn't it? To be truthful and yet cast in the role of a deceiver. When we are confronted with a negative report that does that to Jehovah's people, it's good to remember that Jehovah was the first target of such an attack. Jesus experienced similar attacks during his earthly ministry. And the Apostle Paul was labeled by his opposers as a deceiver. So when we're confronted with negative, false reports, we're not surprised. The question is, how will we respond?
Well, since you are so convinced that you have the truth and that you're being unjustly cast as a deceiver, the best you could do is look at the negative report and prove that it's not true. After all, the truth is not afraid of being questioned.
Have you ever considered some questions that Eve could have asked herself that would have helped her to make a good decision? Here's one. What do I know about the person who is the source of this negative report? What is his motive? Does he have my best interests at heart? Or does he have an agenda?
Nope. Honest journalists do not have a hidden agenda. Their job is to tell the facts. And as an apostate activist myself, my purpose statement is clearly written in the channel description. I'm a former JW debunking the claims of Watchtower. That's it. Now, I ask you the same thing, Watchtower. What is your agenda when you constantly tell your followers to not listen to any negative reports? Is there something you are trying to hide from them? Because you are looking awfully suspicious right now.
And another question. Before I accept as truth a negative report from someone I don't know, is there someone I do know, someone I trust, who I can talk with and get some good advice? Well, Eve certainly could have talked with her husband, and together they could have talked with Jehovah. And if Eve had asked herself those questions, the world would likely be a much different place today.
Why are you even using the story of Adam and Eve for this? Because in the story in Genesis, the serpent was actually telling the truth, and it was God who was lying and keeping things from his sons. This is so dumb.
But Eve chose to believe a lie. How about the pioneer sister and the Bible student that I mentioned earlier? How did they handle the situation? Well, the pioneer sister told us that she reflected on the fact that she was a guest in the Bible student's house, and so she felt it would be rude for her to interrupt the conversation, so she chose to say nothing. What did the Bible student do? Interestingly, she asked the woman, "Do you know the man who wrote that book?" No. Do you know his motive for writing? Why would he write such a book? Well, I know this lady who comes and studies the Bible with me, and I know her motive is good, so I don't think I need to read your book.
What? I call BS. You know how you can know the author and his motive for writing a book? Let me tell you how you can do it. You take the book, you open it, and you read it. If this event actually happened, then this person almost deserved to be roped into a doomsday cult.
What a beautiful response. The Bible student got it. And we get it too.
What a dumbass.
We know, and we're not surprised, that we will be the target of negative reports. At times, we may even be cast in the role of deceivers. And Jehovah has frankly told us that there are some who are willing to exchange the truth of God for the lie. But that will never be true of you or me. Instead, we hold to Jehovah, the God of truth. We continue to recommend ourselves as God's ministers by truthful speech.
In this 10-minute talk, this bozo did not mention a single of these apostate lies, nor did he bother debunking any of these so-called negative reports. The same old drill we've gotten used to already. All negative reports are false, stick your head in the sand, listen, obey, be blessed, donate. Same old shit, different day.
Next, let's benefit from the experience of a brother who made significant life changes when he accepted the truth only to slip back and stray from it later.
Damn, this broadcast has everything so far. Apostate paranoia, persecution porn, governing body cocksucking. All they're missing is emotional manipulation to rope inactive ones back into the fold, and maybe a nice little song to go with it.
Notice how Jehovah feels about those who stray and how he extends his loving arm of assistance.
I grew up in the Highlands of Scotland. It was a beautiful part of the world to grow up in, but my father, when I was growing up, him and his friends, they worked very hard, but they also drank a lot. There was a lot of violence and heavy drinking, and of course this sometimes came into home life as well. When I got into trouble, I always felt deep regret. I always wanted to change. So I knew that I needed to escape from that environment and start afresh. So I decided to move to Edinburgh. I was really doing a lot of fitness training at this time, but really what I had done was I had replaced one addiction, which was alcohol, with another addiction, which was fitness.
Whoa, my dude, how is being a fitness nut even remotely similar to being an alcoholic? Let me guess, you're gonna trade your fitness addiction for a religious drug now?
A few years after I got baptized, I moved to Germany, and during that time, unfortunately, I was disfellowshipped from the Christian congregation. I went to work in the North Sea, and I was so unhappy in this environment that when I was not working, I was drinking a lot. If I was not careful, I would end up doing myself some damage to my health. So I decided to move to Italy. Often when I was out riding my bike, and every time I passed the Kingdom Hall, I would ask the question, how am I going to return to Jehovah? I thought, well, Jehovah will never want me to come back. One Saturday morning, the doorbell went, and sure enough, it was two of Jehovah's Witnesses. I knew that Jehovah had sent these two witnesses, and Jehovah was saying, I still love you, no matter what you have done, I still love you.
Or Italy just happens to be one of the countries with the highest concentration of JWs, and it was just a matter of time before they knocked on your door. I don't see a need to stick Jehovah in the equation.
Jehovah is the only one who can turn a negative situation into something positive and give us a real sense of purpose and happiness in our life.
Nah, dog. Your religion doesn't have a monopoly over purpose and happiness. Glad you found your peace, though.
Have you, like Brother McKay, strayed?
Yes.
Have you become inactive?
Yes.
Or even been removed from the congregation?
Not yet.
Consider the following invitation, so warmly brought to life in our new music video, Home.
Home? Like the DreamWorks movie? Alright guys, time for the music video. If you haven't lost the cringe challenge yet, good luck.
I can feel lost sometimes, like I'm drifting out to sea. When troubles in my life take me far from kingdom realities, but I'm never left in the lurch. Jehovah hears and sends out the search.
I think right now it's a good time to mention my personal story of my shepherding visit after I became inactive, because I became inactive, then 1 year later, it was even more than a year later, two elders came to my house and to give me a shepherding visit because I hadn't been to meetings in a whole year. By that time I was already a full-blown apostate. Well, they didn't know it, but to them I was inactive, and we actually had a very pleasant conversation, and I explained to them all the reasons I had for not believing in the Bible anymore. And you know what they did? Nothing. They just sat there. They didn't try to refute my arguments. They didn't even open up their Bibles at all. All they did was nod, and at the end of it, they shake my hand and give me a hug. They haven't returned ever since. If Jehovah is behind these shepherding visits, these searches, then damn, no wonder this religion is imploding.
He finds me, lifts me up in his arms. He carries me safely away from harm. He brings me back to his fold, my home, my family. I am never alone.
This brochure is hot garbage. Maybe we should cover it one of these days, but it's basically just emotional manipulation to get people to come back. What Watchtower doesn't realize is that most people become inactive because they're no longer convinced of their religion, not because they accidentally strayed from the flock. And most inactive ones who do return do it because they miss the company of the congregation or of their families, not because they address their religious doubts. Come on.
He'll find you, lead you back with his voice, remind you, serving him was your best choice. He'll bring you back to his fold, your home, your family. You are never alone. When you're home, I will be singing. You made it back, welcome home. It's where you belong. And we're so happy to see you. Now you're home.
Yes, love bombed the guy into oblivion so he doesn't leave the fold again. We got him, boys.
You are home. He found you.
Reactivated after 11 years? Are they robots or something? They could have used a different word like returned. I think that sounds way less culty. Reactivated? But it makes sense that these individuals are treated like hardware pieces because that's all Watchtower is. A big machine. Be a good bolt or get off the assembly line.
Lifted you up in his arms. He carried you safely away from harm. He brought you back to his fold. You'll never be alone. When you're home.
I wish I could speak to all these people to learn if they return to the hall because they're convinced of their religion or because they miss their family and friends. I'm leaning on the latter. We're emotional creatures after all. The cherry on the top in this entire mess. It's never too late to come home. Well, it's true, isn't it? Because Armageddon is never gonna show up, so you can always return to the Kingdom Hall anytime you want.
Home is with Jehovah and his people. Home is where we belong. If you've wandered, come home.
Home is where you find people that love you unconditionally and that won't shun you for not sharing their same religious beliefs. If the Kingdom Hall is home, then I'd rather sleep on the streets.
From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is JW.
Oh, get off the stage, you Samuel Jackson ripoff. I think we've had enough of you. It's abundantly clear The governing body is becoming more and more paranoid with apostates, but we're in the internet era, baby, and it's impossible to suppress the truth. So sit back and relax, boys and girls, as we enjoy seeing these bozos in New York scrambling to keep their boat from sinking. So please let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below, and let me know the exact moment you lost the cringe challenge, because I love reading your comments. Making these videos takes a lot of my time and energy, so if you would like to support my work, please head on over to Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. It's only $1 a month and you gain early access to all my work. Or if you would like to give a one-time donation, please follow the links below as well. Take it easy guys, have a wonderful day, stay away from the tower.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.